Evening all, how you doing? So the results are in, we're looking at them now. Let's have a quick skeg and see what happened. Well, wasn't much of a surprise to anyone who pays attention, was it? But we'll look again, out of morbid curiosity. Okay, with 19 out of 23 councils declared, Reform is on 595 seats. The Lib Dems are on 356. And the Cons and Labour have been absolutely decimated. The Independents are beating Labour. And the Greens are almost there as well. None of that's a surprise, is it? In fact, almost all of it we were talking about on this channel for several weeks. Not only the stream that I made yesterday regarding ill-informed boomer Conservatives dogmatically sticking with the party and costing Reform seats, which they definitely did. Aaron Banks almost won. In fact, shall we pull up the poll? I believe he lost by about 4%. Yeah, there it is. Mayor of West England result was a Labour hold. 25% went for Labour, 22.1% for Reform, and 16.6% went for Conservative. So if less than 4% of those brain-dead Conservatives, they must be more into self-flagellation than the Gim of Pulp Fiction. If less than 4% of them had switched, Reform would have won. That's how close it was. Knife-edge stuff. Anyway, we'll look at a few more interesting ones and I'll give you my 2 cents, including a brief discussion about the independents that have been winning. Because I'll tell you what, I don't think those independents are very independently minded when it comes to, I don't know, praying 5 times a day and caving adulterers' heads in with a brick. Do you? Okay, there's still some results trickling in, but what's obvious is, yes, Reform and the Lib Dems crushed the big two. Suffice it to say, if the right had aligned behind Reform, instead of naysaying each other, they would have absolutely smashed it, and I think all 23 councils would have went to Reform. It's that straightforward. So, what have I been saying for years? In fact, wasn't it about 3 years ago when I decided we had to get rid of the Tories, even though it was going to give us a Labour government? And the plan was, yes, we can tolerate that for a few years if it at least kills the Conservative Party forever and we could galvanise behind a new right-wing alternative. Now, obviously, we've hit some bumps in the road, with Farage sounding more and more like a wet blanket every day, but ultimately the plan is still the plan and I'm sticking to it. I've noticed Sargon's gone from being dogmatically against them to revelling in the victory today, so hopefully people like him can get on board and maybe bolster those numbers a bit. Once the word gets out, I'm confident that 30 or 40% of Conservative voters that didn't get the memo apparently and are still voting for them, despite the fact we had Boris Johnson bringing in 1 million blokes a year, those people will now start to get the message. And hopefully we can build on this, get the word out, and by the next set of elections, Reform's numbers have jumped by another 15 to 20%, because all but the most dogmatic Tory voters has finally abandoned the party and gone with a Hail Mary for Reform, who again, we all know what the problems are, but you can't deny Farage's sage approach to politics. This is what I've said. Is he right-wing? Is he saying enough stuff that appeals to people like me and you? No, he isn't. Rupert Lowe sounds much better. But Farage clearly crunched the numbers and thought winning over Joe Normie by instantly throwing out people like Bo from the Lotus Eaters, who nobody here probably thinks he said anything objectionable. But Farage is a smart operator. He knows elections are won by the masses, and rightly or wrongly, it's working. Matt Goodwin has the right of it. The online right, people like us, we don't decide elections. The normies decide them. And Farage made the right move, leaning into the upset Conservatives and going all out against, basically neutering their ability to do what they do with everyone all across Europe who disagrees with the globalist sociopaths and just call them fascists and one-bollocked Austrian painters and all those other buzzwords that they like so much. Farage did that, and he did sacrifice a half dozen good blokes on the altar of political correctness in order to do it. But he's been proved right. The centre wins the day in British politics. It always has done. And that Snake Blair knew it. And that's why he got a massive landslide, because he was saying all the right stuff for the wet centrists, while secretly being a full-blown socialist authoritarian dirtbag. Hopefully, Reform can do the same. Nigel appealed to the normies, but all of his councillors are going to be right-wing, and all of his MPs, or at least a large amount of them, are going to be very, very, very on board with lots of deportations and a ring of steel around the United Kingdom. So I think, as I've said all along, since years before today and yesterday, that's the plan. Tolerate a Starmer government. We knew that the second we started moving away from the Conservatives. We knew that was happening last year. Tolerate it. Galvanise behind any alternative to the Conservatives that seems even remotely conservative, and then try to shift things from there. If you're still yapping about I mean, loads of you are badgering me in the comments. If you're still yapping about UKIP and Homeland, they've got no chance. So stop being part of the problem and start being part of the solution. Oh yeah, and I said I'd briefly talk about the independents, right? Independent. Not really independent if all you care about is the Gaza Strip, is it? Can you be independent if you're a dogmatic theologian who has the exact same beliefs and opinions on every single nuanced opinion on planet Earth as an illiterate, goat-herding, pot-bellied barbarian from the Bronze Age? If you believe all that, you can't really be independent, are you? To me, an independent's like one of these teenagers who first discovers the idea of non-conformity and just goes, hey, I'm a free thinker, man. I think for myself. Can't really call yourself an independent when you get all your opinions from one book, all right? Just one. Don't need anything else. Don't need geography and history. Just need one book. And these are the independents. Dozens of them. Some of them, yes, are going to be pinko socialists, but many of them, as we see from this story in the election last year, is, well, we know what they care about, and it ain't anywhere in England. I'll tell you that much. You also remember Jess Phillips, old sheep teeth there. She got barraged after the last election. She narrowly won by a couple of hundred seats or something. And do you know why? It's because Burmalabad currently is home to every single one of Osama's wives. So that's happening. So these are the independents. And if you don't galvanise behind a right-wing option, who do you think's going to be running things in the UK in about 2040? It's going to be a few hundred independents that have finally got enough votes and share of the population to form their own party, a new party, a party that likes crescents and halal and stapling bin liners to women's heads before you let them walk to the shops. We know what's coming. So these are the independent winners, at least a significant number of them. Trust me on that. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm done for the day. I'll be live streaming tomorrow at 7. I might have guests on, I might not. We'll see. There's a few people been chatting to me this week. Whatever. If nobody turns up, I'll just pull up some stories that boil your piss in your bladder and poke some holes in my desk instead. All right? Thanks for tuning in. See you all tomorrow. 7 p.m. Be there or be square. Toodle pip. Cheers.